Alex never expected his life to take such a wild turn when he signed up for the interplanetary exchange program. As a student of xenobiology, he had always dreamed of studying alien life forms. But nothing could have prepared him for his new roommate, Gorvish, a towering alien from a distant planet called Xanthu. Gorvish wasn't like any of the other aliens Alex had studied. He was huge, over 7 feet tall, with dark scales covering his body and eyes that glowed like 2 burning stars. His people, the Xanthians, were known for their strength and their terrifying mating rituals. The first time Alex met Gorvish, it wasn't exactly a warm welcome. The alien stood in the doorway of their shared apartment, staring down at Alex with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He didn't speak at first, but when he did, his voice was deep and rumbled like distant thunder. "You, human?" Gorvish asked, his words slow and deliberate. Alex swallowed nervously, offering a smile. "Yeah, that's me. I'm Alex. I guess we're roommates." Gorvish gave a low grunt in response, clearly not amused. He didn't seem to care much for human customs or pleasantries. Instead, he went straight to his corner of the room, unpacking what looked like strange weapons and devices Alex couldn't even begin to understand. Alex had done his research on the Xanthians before arriving. They were a peaceful species most of the time, but their mating season was something else entirely. It was a period of intense aggression and territorial behavior, something that made even the bravest intergalactic travelers think twice before visiting Xanthu. And Alex had arrived right in the middle of it. Over the next few days, Alex tried to keep his distance, focusing on his studies and keeping out of Gorvish's way. But that wasn't so easy. The apartment wasn't large, and with the alien's towering figure occupying most of the space, Alex felt as though he was always walking on eggshells. The storm outside, which had forced the city into a lockdown, only made things worse. The storm wasn't just a regular weather event. It was a dangerous space storm that disrupted communications and transportation. And with no way out, Alex was stuck with his unpredictable roommate for the time being. It didn't take long for Alex to notice that something strange was happening with Gorvish. His usually calm demeanor began to shift. The scales on his skin started to shimmer with a strange light, and his eyes, those burning, otherworldly eyes, seemed to glow brighter with each passing day. At first, Alex tried to ignore it, but it was hard to miss. The air around Gorvish felt charged, like a storm was building. "Is everything okay?" Alex asked one afternoon, trying to sound casual as he watched Gorvish move around the room. The alien's body seemed to ripple with energy, and his movements were more jerky than usual. Gorvish paused and turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "It is mating season," he said, his voice low and heavy. "Mating season," Alex repeated, blinking in surprise. He had read about the Xanthian mating season, but hearing it from Gorvish made it feel all too real. During this time, the Xanthians became highly territorial, aggressive, and unpredictable. Alex had read that some of their people even lost all sense of reason. Alex's heart began to race. I didn't realize it was happening now. How long does it last?" Gorvish didn't answer right away. Instead, he let out a long, rumbling sigh, almost as if the weight of his situation was too much to bear. "It varies, but it is not a pleasant time." Alex swallowed nervously, trying not to panic. The idea of living in close quarters with an alien who could lose control at any moment was terrifying. But what choice did he have? The storm outside kept them both trapped in the apartment, and Alex didn't want to make things worse by offending his roommate. He needed to stay calm, keep his distance, and pray that the storm cleared soon. Later that night, Alex lay awake in his bed, listening to the strange noises coming from Gorvish's side of the room. The alien's breathing was heavy and deep, and every now and then, Alex could hear what sounded like growls and growls. It made him nervous, but he told himself to stay calm. He was a student of xenobiology, after all. He knew how to handle alien creatures, but nothing could have prepared him for the way things would escalate. The next morning, Alex woke to find Gorvesh standing in front of him, his eyes glowing even brighter than before. The air in the room was thick with tension, and Alex could feel it in his bones. Something was about to happen, and he had no idea how to stop it. Gorvesh leaned down, his face inches from Alex's. "You will stay close," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "It is the only way." Alex's heart raced. "Stay close. What do you mean?" Before Alex could react, the storm outside intensified, shaking the walls of the apartment. And in that moment, Alex realized this was just the beginning. Alex had always thought of himself as a calm person, able to keep his head in stressful situations. But now, standing in the middle of his small apartment with Gorvesh looming over him, he wasn't so sure. The air was thick with tension, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The storm outside raged on, its furious winds shaking the building as if it were nothing more than a toy. The city was locked down, and there was no escape for anyone. No one would be able to leave the apartment complex until the storm passed. But Alex's problem wasn't the storm. It was the massive alien in front of him, who was now showing signs of the mating season's influence. Gorvesh was pacing the room, his muscles rippling beneath his dark scales. His glowing eyes flicked over to Alex every now and then, and Alex felt an uncomfortable shiver run down his spine each time. The Xanthian's body seemed to hum with energy, and his breathing had grown heavy and labored. It was clear that the alien was struggling to keep his emotions in check. "So, what exactly happens during the mating season?" Alex asked, trying to sound casual despite his growing nervousness. Gorvesh stopped pacing and turned to face him. His eyes narrowed, and his voice became low and gravelly. "We change," he said, his words deliberate. "Our instincts take over. We become territorial, aggressive. It is part of the process." Alex nodded, trying to remember everything he'd read about the Xanthians. He had learned that their mating season was intense, to say the least. During this time, their bodies released powerful pheromones that could drive them into a frenzy. The species wasn't violent by nature, but when the mating season hit, their animal instincts took control, and they would fight anyone who came too close to their territory. "And what do you need from me?" Alex asked cautiously. He wasn't sure if he was ready to hear the answer. Gorvesh paused, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he spoke again. "You must help calm me," he said, his tone softer now. "If I become too aggressive, I will not be able to control myself. You must stay near. Help keep my focus." Alex blinked in surprise. "Wait, you want me to stay close to you? Like, for the entire time?" he asked, his voice rising with confusion. Gorvesh nodded. "Yes, it is the only way I will survive this season without harm. If I am not calmed, the frenzy will take over. You are human. You think differently. Your presence may help." Alex didn't know whether to laugh or run out of the apartment. This was way beyond anything he had ever expected when he signed up for this exchange program. He had known that living with an alien roommate could be tricky, but this was something else entirely. Still, Alex was a problem solver. He couldn't just panic and hope for the best. There had to be something he could do. After all, he was studying xenobiology for a reason. He had learned about alien species' behaviors, their biology, and their cultures. This was just another challenge he had to figure out. "Okay," Alex said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I'll stay close, but you have to promise me one thing. You won't hurt me, okay?" Gorvesh's eyes flashed, the glow intensifying. "I will not harm you, human," he growled, but there was a softness to his voice now, almost like a strange mix of respect and desperation. Alex let out a slow breath, his mind racing. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew one thing. He needed to keep Gorvesh from losing control. If the alien's instincts took over completely, there was no telling what would happen. For the next few hours, things grew more intense. The storm outside continued to howl, but inside, the tension between Alex and Gorvesh was palpable. The alien's movements became jerky and erratic as the mating season's effects worsened. He kept walking in circles, his body radiating heat and energy, as if he couldn't contain it any longer. Alex watched from a safe distance, unsure of what to do. He had never been in a situation like this before. Gorvesh's behavior was unlike anything he had encountered in his studies. The alien was clearly trying to keep himself together, but the pheromones he was releasing were making the situation difficult for both of them. "Gorvesh, is there anything I can do to help you?" Alex asked, his voice soft but firm. The Xanthian stopped suddenly, his gaze locking onto Alex. "Stay near," he said simply, his voice rough. "Your presence is soothing. Just your being here keeps me focused." Alex nodded, taking a deep breath. He had no idea how staying close could help, but he was willing to try. So he did just that. He stayed nearby, trying his best to stay calm while Gorvesh struggled with the overwhelming feelings of the mating season. Every now and then, the alien would pause and glance at him, almost as though trying to gauge Alex's reaction. Time passed slowly, and Alex couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would he be able to keep Gorvesh calm until the mating season passed? And if not, what kind of danger would they both be in? The storm outside continued to roar, and Alex could only pray that it wasn't a sign of the chaos to come. The storm outside howled like a wild animal, its winds shaking the walls of the apartment. Inside, however, it was the growing tension between Alex and Gorvesh that kept Alex on edge. The alien's body had become a living storm of its own. His skin pulsed with strange patterns of light, and his glowing eyes flickered with an intensity that made Alex's heart race. Gorvesh's breathing was heavy, labored, as though he was fighting something deep inside him. Alex had no idea how long he could keep this up. Every time Gorvesh looked at him, Alex could feel the weight of the alien's instincts pressing down on him. It was like being in the presence of a predator, one that could snap at any moment. But Alex had no choice. The lockdown had trapped them together. The storm outside made it impossible for anyone to leave the building. He was stuck in this situation with an alien whose species could lose all control during mating season. "Gorvesh?" Alex asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Are you okay?" The alien stopped pacing. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting Alex's. There was a deep, almost painful look in them. "I am fighting it," he said, his voice low and strained. "But it is not easy. The instincts are strong." Alex could feel his anxiety building, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to stay calm. He was the one who could think clearly. He was the one who could help. Gorvesh needed him, whether the alien realized it or not. And even though Alex was terrified, he couldn't back down. Not now. "Is there anything I can do?" Alex asked. He had read everything there was to know about Xanthian biology before coming here, but nothing prepared him for the reality of this situation. The Xanthian mating season was a force of nature. If he didn't act soon, the alien might lose control completely. Gorvesh didn't answer at first. He seemed to be struggling with something, as if he was fighting an inner battle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Your presence helps," Gorvesh said. "It calms me. The pheromones, the aggression, they fade when you are near, but it is not enough. The season demands more." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. "More," he repeated, confused. "What do you mean, more?" Gorvesh took a step closer, and Alex instinctively took a small step back. The alien was still towering over him, his broad shoulders blocking most of the room's light. "I need a partner," Gorvesh said, his voice low and tinged with desperation. "Someone to help me, to calm my mind. Only then can I control the frenzy. Alex stared at him, his mouth dry. This was beyond anything he had imagined. He had read that the Xanthians would seek out partners during mating season, but he never thought he'd be involved. He was human. He wasn't supposed to be part of this. But the look in Gorvesh's eyes made it clear. This wasn't a choice. If Alex didn't help, the alien could become a danger to both of them. Gorvesh's tone softened, almost pleading. Please, you are the only one who can help. Alex felt a pang of sympathy mixed with his fear. He could see the struggle in Gorvesh's eyes. It was clear the alien didn't want this. It wasn't natural for him to ask for help. But the season was powerful, and the mating rituals could take control of even the most rational beings. I'll try, Alex said, though his voice trembled slightly. I don't know how to help, but I'll try. The alien nodded once, a flicker of something resembling gratitude crossing his face. Gorvesh moved slowly, carefully, as if unsure how to approach Alex without causing harm. The air in the room felt charged with tension. Every movement, every breath, seemed to make the moment heavier. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The storm continued to rage outside, its winds howling louder than ever. But inside, the silence was deafening. Alex stood in place, trying to keep his mind clear, trying to think. He knew that the mating season was a dangerous time for Gorvesh, but what could he possibly do to help? His heart raced as he realized that simply staying near the alien might not be enough. Gorvesh suddenly turned toward the window, his eyes narrowing as if he was listening for something. The light in the room seemed to flicker with the storm, casting eerie shadows across the walls. For a moment, Alex wondered if the storm outside was only a reflection of the chaos inside Gorvesh's mind. Alex, Gorvesh spoke, his voice quieter now. You must understand. The frenzy is powerful. I may not recognize you. I may lose control. If I do, I need you to stay calm. If you panic, it will make things worse. Can you do that? Alex swallowed hard. The gravity of the situation was finally sinking in. This wasn't just about helping Gorvesh survive the mating season. It was about survival for both of them. If Gorvesh lost control, Alex could be in real danger. I'll stay calm, Alex said, his voice steadier than he felt. I won't leave you. For the first time since meeting Gorvesh, the alien looked at him with something close to trust. Thank you. The moment passed, but the weight of it hung in the air. The storm outside had reached its peak, and with it, the tension in the apartment seemed to grow even more unbearable. It was only a matter of time before Gorvesh's instincts took over completely. Alex could only hope he would be ready when that happened. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. The situation was spiraling out of control, and every part of him screamed to get out of there. But with the storm outside trapping them both, running was no longer an option. Gorvesh needed his help, and Alex couldn't turn away, no matter how terrifying the prospect seemed. The alien's glowing eyes were locked on him, and the intensity in them was growing with each passing second. Alex could see the struggle in Gorvesh's features. His body seemed to vibrate with pent-up energy, his massive form shifting uneasily. The mating season's effects were clearly taking hold of him, and Alex knew it was only a matter of time before Gorvesh lost control. Stay close, Gorvesh repeated, his voice hoarse. You must stay close. Alex nodded, though his stomach churned with uncertainty. I'm here, he said, trying to sound reassuring. But how do I help you? What do I do? Gorvesh's deep, rumbling breath filled the room. Your presence, it helps me focus. But I need more, something physical. It is instinct. His voice trailed off, like he was fighting against every word he spoke. Alex didn't know what something physical meant, and he didn't want to find out the hard way. He tried to focus on the research he'd done before arriving, but the situation was so different from anything in his textbooks. Every second felt like the tension was about to snap. For the next few minutes, the two of them stood in silence, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Gorvish moved in slow, deliberate steps, his eyes darting between Alex and the window, as if the outside world was too overwhelming for him. The storm outside howled louder, rattling the windows as if the world itself was echoing the chaos building inside the alien. Alex's heart raced in his chest, and he could feel his palms begin to sweat. The storm's fury seemed to match the turmoil Gorvish was facing. The alien's entire body seemed to shimmer with energy. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling like the waves of an ocean. His hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, Alex thought he might lash out. "Gorvish," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, we need to stay calm. We'll figure this out." But Gorvish's eyes flickered with something darker, something primal. His shoulders tensed, and for a second, Alex thought the alien might not be able to control himself any longer. The pheromones in the room were almost overwhelming now, like an invisible weight pressing down on him. Then, in an instant, Gorvish let out a low growl, a sound that sent chills through Alex's body. The alien's eyes glowed brighter, and his muscles twitched with barely contained power. "I can't hold on much longer," Gorvish muttered, his voice shaking with the effort. "I will lose control if I don't release this energy. If I do not find balance." Alex's thoughts raced. What had he read? What had he learned about the Xanthian mating season? He knew that Gorvish was battling something deeply embedded in his biology, something far more powerful than either of them. This wasn't just about physical control, it was about something fundamental to the alien's survival. Before Alex could respond, Gorvish's body trembled violently. His eyes, once glowing fiercely, now seemed to flicker, struggling to keep their unnatural light under control. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Alex's mind was spinning, trying to figure out what to do next. Then, as if on instinct, Alex stepped forward, breaking the invisible barrier between them. He didn't know why he did it. He didn't know if it was the right thing to do. But all he could think about was stopping the alien from losing control. The moment Alex moved closer, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was like the air had suddenly cleared, the suffocating pressure lifting for just a second. Gorvish's eyes locked onto Alex's, his breathing slowing. The alien looked at him with something like relief, though it was still mixed with confusion and fear. "Alex," Gorvish said, his voice barely a whisper, "you have no idea what this means." I'm trying," Alex stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll help you. Just don't hurt anyone. Please." Gorvish's expression softened, just for a moment. "I do not want to hurt you," he said quietly. "But the frenzy, it is powerful. I am afraid." Alex could see the fear in Gorvish's eyes now, the alien's human-like vulnerability breaking through the terrifying persona he had built around himself. Alex's heart went out to him. No matter how different Gorvish was from him, they were both sentient beings trying to survive in an overwhelming world. And Alex realized that if they were going to make it through this, they would need to trust each other. "I won't leave you, Gorvish," Alex said firmly. "I'll stay by your side. We'll figure this out together." The alien's shoulders sagged slightly in what could only be described as relief. His eyes lost some of their ferocity, replaced by something softer, almost grateful. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the room seemed to calm. The storm outside still raged, but Alex and Gorvish were no longer trapped by it. They were trapped together in a different kind of storm now, one that neither of them could control. The storm outside continued its violent assault on the apartment building, the wind howling louder with every passing second. But inside, the chaos was no longer just the weather. It was in the air, thick with tension, swirling around Alex and Gorvish. The alien struggle had only intensified, and Alex could feel the change in the room. For a moment, the two of them stood there, breathing in sync, but the stillness was deceiving. It felt like the calm before a storm. The pheromones in the air were growing stronger, clouding Alex's thoughts. He could feel the pressure building, as though the very air around him was thickening, becoming heavier with every breath he took. Gorvesh's glowing eyes flickered with an almost violent intensity, and Alex noticed how his body seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. His massive muscles were tensed, as if ready to spring into action at any moment. It was clear that the mating season was beginning to take over completely, and Gorvesh's fight for control was rapidly weakening. Alex took a cautious step forward, unsure of what to do. Every instinct told him to stay back, to keep his distance, but he couldn't. Not now. Not when Gorvesh needed him most. "Gorvesh, I'm here," Alex said, his voice unsteady but determined. "You're not alone." The alien's eyes flicked to him, briefly, before darting away. "I do not want this, Alex," Gorvesh growled, his voice rough. "I do not want to lose control, but it is inevitable." Alex didn't know how to respond. He could see the fear in Gorvesh's eyes, the alien's overwhelming desire to hold on to his sanity, to remain in control of his actions. But the more the mating season took hold, the harder it became for him to keep his mind from being overtaken by instinct. "I'm not going anywhere," Alex said, taking another step closer. "I'll help you through this." Gorvesh's massive form trembled with the effort of holding back his primal urges. His breath was labored, almost animalistic, and his eyes darkened with the struggle. "Stay close," he muttered, his voice raw. "If you are not near, I will lose myself. I will." Alex could feel the weight of Gorvesh's words. The alien was fighting a battle he couldn't win alone. The instincts of his species were too powerful, and it was clear that without Alex, Gorvesh might not be able to stay human, stay rational. The air in the room seemed to hum with a strange energy, as though something was building, something that would soon reach its breaking point. Alex's heart was pounding, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was it. This was the moment that would determine whether they both survived the night. Slowly, Gorvesh reached out toward Alex, his large hand trembling as it came closer. The alien's eyes were wide, his body coiled like a spring. "I cannot contain it," he whispered. Before Alex could react, Gorvesh's hand brushed against his arm. It was enough to make Alex's skin crawl, but not from fear. There was a strange warmth there, a need that went beyond the alien's struggle. It was as if Gorvesh was searching for something, anything, to hold on to in his madness. The touch sent a jolt through Alex's body, and his heart skipped a beat. He could feel the weight of the pheromones now, almost like a physical pressure on his chest. But he couldn't let the overwhelming feelings distract him. This wasn't about him. It was about helping Gorvesh stay grounded. "I'm here," Alex repeated, his voice stronger now, more certain. "I'll help you. I won't let go." Gorvesh's eyes flickered between Alex and the space around them, his breathing growing faster. The alien seemed to be caught between two worlds, the wild instincts of his species and the rational part of him that still clung to control. But the instincts were winning. The mating season was in full force, and there was no turning back now. "I will not hurt you," Gorvesh said, his voice strained, almost pleading. "But the frenzy, it is powerful. If you cannot help me, it will take me." Alex could feel the panic rising inside of him, but he refused to let it show. Gorvesh's words weren't just a warning. They were a desperate plea for help. And no matter how afraid Alex was, he knew he couldn't leave the alien to face this alone. "Stay with me," Alex said, his voice almost a whisper. "Just stay with me, and I'll do everything I can." Gorvesh's hand moved slightly, his massive fingers brushing against Alex's shoulder, like a silent request for reassurance. And Alex gave it. He stepped closer, putting his hand on the alien's arm, grounding him, even as his own heart raced with fear. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside continued to rage, but inside the apartment, a fragile connection was forming. Alex wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew this. If Gorvesh lost control, it would be a fight for survival. For both of them. But for now, they were together, and that was all Alex could hold on to. The storm outside had reached its peak, the wind so strong it sounded like the building might collapse. But inside, the air was thick with an entirely different kind of pressure. Alex could feel the weight of the pheromones in the air, almost suffocating him. Every breath felt heavier, every movement slower. Gorvesh was trembling now, his entire body vibrating as he fought against the primal instincts taking over. Gorvesh's eyes glowed brighter than ever, his pupils dilated with a strange intensity that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. The alien's breath came in shallow gasps, his body pulsing with the force of the mating season. Alex had never seen Gorvesh this close to losing control. The alien's fear was palpable, but so was his desperation. "I can't," Gorvesh muttered, his voice thick with struggle. "I can't hold it in much longer." Alex swallowed hard, his own body tense with fear. He knew Gorvesh was doing everything he could to fight it. But there was something wild about the alien now, something fierce that seemed to pull at Alex's very soul. It wasn't just the pheromones. It was the raw need in Gorvesh's eyes, the instinctive drive to mate that was beginning to override everything else. "Stay with me," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can make it through this." Gorvesh's eyes flickered to him, but there was a deep, fearful hesitation in them. "You don't understand, Alex," he rasped. "The frenzy is not something I can control. It's stronger than anything I have ever felt. It wants you." Alex's heart skipped a beat at the alien's words. He felt a strange shiver of panic, but he couldn't let it take over. Not now. Not when Gorvesh needed him most. He knew the alien wasn't in his right mind, that the instincts of his species were controlling him. But Alex also knew that if he pulled away now, if he ran, it could push Gorvesh completely over the edge. "I'm not leaving you," Alex said firmly, his voice stronger than he felt. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm here. We'll get through this." Gorvesh's trembling hand reached out for him, and this time, Alex didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his own pulse pounding in his ears. The touch was electric, like nothing he'd ever felt before. Gorvesh's skin was warm and rough against his, and the sheer size of the alien's hand made Alex feel small, fragile. But there was a strange comfort in it. He could feel Gorvesh's fear, and it grounded him in the midst of the chaos. "I don't want to hurt you," Gorvesh whispered, his voice broken. "But I don't know if I can hold on. It's like I'm being pulled apart from the inside." Alex placed his hand on Gorvesh's arm, steadying him. "You don't have to do this alone. We'll figure it out. Just breathe. Focus on me." For a moment, Gorvesh seemed to calm, his body's tremors slowing, his breath becoming more regular. But it was clear that the alien was still fighting against the overwhelming urge to lose himself in the frenzy. It was like watching a dam about to break. Every second, the pressure building until it was almost unbearable. "Please," Gorvesh said, his voice hoarse, a pleading tone that Alex had never heard from the alien before. "Help me. I can't do this alone." Alex didn't know what to do. Nothing in his research had prepared him for this. He had read about the Xanthian mating season, but reading about it and living through it were two very different things. He knew that Gorvesh needed more than just emotional support now. He needed someone to ground him, to anchor him to reality before his instincts completely overtook him. The pheromones in the air were nearly overwhelming now, swirling around Alex like a cloud. His thoughts were muddled, his pulse racing, but he couldn't let it distract him. He had to stay focused. Suddenly, Gorvesh let out a low, agonized growl. His glowing eyes snapped open, and Alex saw something in them that terrified him. The alien was losing the battle. The primal instincts that had been building in Gorvesh for so long were now fully in control. The alien's body was tense, his movements jerky and erratic. His breathing was rapid, almost frantic. "Alex, please." Gorvish's voice cracked as he reached out again, his hand trembling. "Help me. I can't." Before Gorvish could finish, Alex made a decision. He didn't know if it was the right one, but in that moment, it was the only choice he could make. Stepping forward, Alex grabbed hold of Gorvish's hand, holding it firmly. He didn't flinch, didn't pull back. He stood there, face to face with the alien, refusing to let him slip away. "I'm here," Alex said, his voice filled with determination. "You won't lose yourself. Not while I'm here." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Gorvish's body was still trembling, but his eyes, though filled with the storm of the mating season, seemed to soften. Slowly, his breath began to steady. The frantic energy that had consumed him started to fade, just a little. Alex didn't know if he could help Gorvish fight the frenzy, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going anywhere. Not now, not ever. They were in this together. And for the first time that night, the storm outside seemed to calm, just a little, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. The storm outside had finally begun to subside, the thunder fading into distant rumbles, and the wind softening to a mere whisper against the windows. Inside the apartment, however, the air still hummed with an energy that neither Alex nor Gorvish could ignore. They stood there together, connected by an invisible thread, as if the world around them had paused to watch. Gorvish's trembling had finally stopped, his large frame still and steady. The glow in his eyes had dimmed, no longer the fierce blaze of the mating season, but something quieter, more controlled. His breath was slower now, and the once overwhelming pheromones in the air had lessened, though they still lingered, faint but persistent. It was as though the storm inside him had passed, leaving behind a strange, almost peaceful stillness. Alex didn't let go of Gorvish's hand. His heart was still racing, but the panic had faded, replaced by something else, something deeper. He had stayed with the alien through the worst of it, and now, for the first time that night, he felt a tentative sense of relief. Gorvish hadn't lost control. He hadn't hurt him. And as strange as it seemed, Alex realized that they had both made it through together. For several long moments, neither of them spoke. The tension between them had eased, but there was still an unspoken understanding that lingered. Alex could feel the weight of the alien's gaze on him, but there was no more fear in those eyes, just a quiet gratitude. "Alex," Gorvish finally spoke, his voice still rough, but softer than before. I don't know how to thank you." Alex gave a small, exhausted smile. "You don't have to thank me. I just did what any friend would do." Gorvish's eyes flickered with something that resembled confusion, but there was also a spark of something else, something deeper. "Friend," he repeated, as if the concept was new to him. Alex nodded. "Yeah, friends help each other. And, well, you're not so different from me. You just needed someone to be there." The alien's gaze softened, and for the first time, Alex saw a glimmer of something that looked almost like vulnerability in his eyes. "I've never had a friend like you before," Gorvish said quietly. "I've always been alone during the mating season. I didn't think anyone could help me through it." Alex's heart tightened at the alien's words. He had seen Gorvish as this large, intimidating creature, a being of power and mystery. But in this moment, with the frenzy gone and the storm outside calmed, he realized that Gorvish was just like him in so many ways, just a living being trying to survive in a world that didn't always make sense. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Alex said softly, his voice sincere. "I'm here. You don't have to go through this by yourself again." Gorvish's eyes shone with something that was unmistakable: relief, gratitude, and something that might have been hope. It was as if Alex's words had unlocked something deep inside the alien, something that had been buried beneath layers of fear and instinct. The creature's massive form, once tense and almost hostile, now seemed less imposing, more approachable. Gorvesh was no longer just the terrifying alien from another world. He was a being who had experienced something deeply personal, something that Alex had helped him through. For a long moment, the two of them just stood there, each processing what had just happened. The room was quiet now, the storm outside nothing more than a distant memory. Alex had no idea what the future held, but for the first time since the night had begun, he felt a strange sense of peace. "I don't know what's next for us," Alex said, breaking the silence. "But I'll be here, no matter what." Gorvesh nodded, a slow, deliberate movement that spoke volumes. "I am grateful. I didn't think anyone would be willing to stay with me during the mating season. I was afraid I would lose myself." Alex shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You didn't lose yourself. You fought through it, and I was right here with you." Gorvesh seemed to consider this for a moment before his lips twitched into what might have been the faintest smile. It was a gesture so small, so human, that it almost made Alex laugh. In that smile, Alex saw something that he hadn't expected, a connection, a bond that went beyond the alien struggle, beyond the mating frenzy, and beyond the differences between their species. For the first time that night, Alex felt truly certain of something. He had helped Gorvesh through the worst of it, but he had also gained something in return, something that neither of them had anticipated. They were no longer just alien and human. They were something more, something deeper. They were allies, survivors, and in some ways, friends. And for Alex, that was enough.